After completing step 1 for view A, and remember, we aren't sewing view A, but our instructions over here told us to go to view A because view A has some of the same instructions. The sleeves are attached the same for view A and view B, even though there's different things about each pattern. The sleeves are the same. So we've done the first step of view A, and we'll move over here to the second step because it told us to do steps 1 and 2. And this one says to pin the sleeves at the back raglan seams, right sides together, matching notches and stitch. So this is going to be pretty much the exact same thing we just did over here with the front, but we're going to do it with the back. So let's first start with pinning the sleeves with our right sides together. So I already have my sleeves and they're attached to the front, so I know easily which side's the back, but just a reminder, your back has 2 notches. So if you don't have 2 notches, then you might have sewn the back to your front, so double check that. And now I need to grab out my back piece. So this is my back piece right here. Piece number 2. It looks kind of similar to the front, but a little different. You'll notice it has this little circle, or this like kind of short spot right here, and that's going to be where my neckline is. And then over here is my sleeve. Here's the other part that attaches to my sleeve. And you'll notice the double notches, so those double notches will line up with the double notches on my sleeves. So if I were to pin it on to my sleeves like this, then I would have my wrong side to my right side. So I need to flip it over so that I have right sides together. Now that I have my right sides together, I can go ahead, and the neckline is up here where all the other necklines are. So we have the neckline from this sleeve, the neckline from the front, neckline from the other sleeve, and the neckline from the back all together, so I'm not putting it on upside down. I can take my back sleeve seam and match it up with the back of my hoodie, and I'll match them up in the corners first. So I'll match this side, and then I'll match over here. This is going to look pretty familiar. It's pretty much the same thing we did with the front. And then I'm going to match them up at the notches. So if I stretch this out, you'll notice that they don't match up exactly right, and that's what it's supposed to be. So I'm going to have to manually move it over. Okay, and this is what I was talking about with easing it in earlier, but you might see it a little bit more here. So I'm going to line it up so that my 2 notches are right on top of each other. It's really important to match up your notches. I'm going to be checking for that, so make sure you're matching up your notches. So you'll notice here after I've matched up my notches that there's a little bubble on one side. And you might be concerned, but don't be, because that's how it should be. The purpose of the notch is to let me know that there actually needs to be a little bit more fabric on the back of the hoodie than there needs to be on the sleeve right here, because you need to have enough room to move your arm around. So this is for like your shoulder blade and things like that. So it's supposed to be a little bit bigger. And the lucky thing is our fabric stretches. So if I pull this tight, then they line right up just like that. So I'm going to ease this in. And we talked about this a little bit with the front, but you couldn't see exactly what easing it in was because we didn't have a bubble. So now we're going to see what this does. Remember, when I stretch it out, they come together. If I was to just like slide my fingers over from the middle, or from this side, this pin right here, and pin in the middle, then all of that bubble would be put in like a 2-inch area. And I want it spaced out over this whole section between the notch and the top, or like the neckline. So I'm going to do that by stretching it out. So I stretch it out, and then I'm going to pinch in the middle. So it's kind of tricky to do. You might need a partner to help you. But you're going to stretch, so I'm going to hold it right here. I'm holding the 2 pinpoints. I'm pinning the middle. And then I'll just put my pin right there. And you'll see that kind of stretch, that like spreads out this little, so it has 2 humps instead of 1. And if I want, I can do that one more time. It's a little bit easier when it's smaller. I just stretch out between the 2 pins, and I put a pin in the middle, and it evens out my lumps. So that's called easing it in. And as you sew, you can kind of stretch the fabric out a little bit so that they come together. See how when I stretch it, it just comes together? So you can do that a little bit as you sew if you have a big gap somewhere. This side doesn't have as much of a gap. I'm still going to ease it out in just to make sure I'm evening out everything. But I'll just hold the 2 edges like so. So I have my 2 edges in my hands. I'm going to pin the middle. I'll do that in one more spot. So I have this side ready to go, and I'm going to go ahead and sew it. at 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm here at my machine and I have my back sleeve seam, so I'm sewing the back of my hoodie to the back of my sleeve. Remember, I checked to make sure they both had double notches, so I know that they're both the back. I'm going to sew them together here with 1/4 inch seam allowance. Just a reminder, 1/4 inch is what this hoodie uses. The standard for commercial patterns is 5/8 seam allowance. So this is pretty unique. We've talked about this a little bit. I'm just going to look back at my pattern guide sheet to make sure I've done everything I need to. So I've pinned the sleeves together at the back raglan seams with my right sides together, so my pretty sides together. Matching the notches, which is important. I'll check to make sure your notches are matched, so make sure they're matched before you sew. And then it says to stitch. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to start stitching. Before sewing, I'm going to pull my threads back so that they get out of the way and they don't get tangled. I'll line everything up with the edge of my presser foot, and then I'm going to sew. I'll back stitch so my clothes don't fall apart, and then I'm going to sew down the side seam. I'm going to go out a little bit where my notch is because in the video I cut mine almost to 1/4 inch because I was thinking the standard seam allowance is 5/8 seam allowance, but in this pattern it's actually 1/4 inch. So I'm going to make sure that I write instructions that tell you guys to do 1/4 inch when you do that, but if by chance you followed the video and you cut it about 1/4 inch, what you're going to do is you're just going to sew a little bit out. So I'm just going to go a little off my 1/4 inch seam allowance so I can go around my notches to make sure I don't have a hole there. And then I'll just kind of slowly taper back down to where I'm back at my 1/4 inch again. I'm going to back stitch. Okay, now I'll trim my threads. And I have this seam completed. You can still see my notches are lined right up with each other, just like it said. Let's look back over here to make sure that we followed our pattern guide sheet correctly. We pinned our sleeves to the back, we did the right sides together, we matched our notches, and we stitched. So I did this side right. Now I just need to do the other side. The other side of your back you're going to do just like we did with this side and with the front. So I'll let you do that on your own. If you have questions about it, you can always watch this video and just do the rear or the mirror image of what we already did.